Hello, hello. Welcome to my office. We're studying birds today, specifically bird wings. When I was testing YouTube things, tech things, a few weeks ago, I was drawing a bunch of birds, and I kept thinking to myself, man, I still have a lot to figure out about how wings work. And then we drew a bunch of cats. And so that's what I did. I've been working on this today, and I have two major ideas I want to nestle in my brain forever. And they are primaries and secondaries. These are the main shapes of the wing. There's lots of other things to learn about the anatomy, about feathers, about the different types of feathers, this little thing called an alula, which is fun, and lots of other things to this. But today I just want to try and commit to memory those two things, primaries and secondaries. The primaries connect to what is effectively the wrist and fingers, called the metacarpus. Metacarpal 1, metacarpal 2. And I'll have this, I'm going to be posting this on my Patreon if you want a closer look. But basically, primaries are connected to the wrist and fingers, and secondaries are connected to the forearm. And then you have tertiaries, which are connected to like the humerus, but primaries and secondaries. That's what we're working on today. And we're just going to draw some quick little birds and some wings. So I want to start with this guy. This is a nice overhead view of the wings. And with my previous work, and some work that we'll get into today, I can kind of visualize the shoulder, the scapula, this arm coming up, so that would be the humerus, and then, oh no, wait a minute. Let me look again. This is why we're here. See, it's confusing a little bit how we're bending. So that must be the forearm. This must be the forearm. So I think the humerus must be a little bit foreshortened. And then this is the forearm, and then the fingers, because these are the secondaries here, and these are the primaries. So that's got to be how it is. Yeah, I think the humerus is quite short. Let's look at this one. Yeah, so I'm thinking we're seeing a foreshortened idea of the humerus. And this is something else I want to commit to memory with the secondaries and primaries, is how far out these, and then I'm not sure what to call these either, but kind of how far out they come before the feathers start. This is all about folding too, how wings fold. So many useful charts and things out there. It's really fun to look at. Okay. So back to our bird here. This is a parrot. Here we go. This is our forearm. This is our wrist and fingers. These are the primaries. These are the secondaries. I see the other groups of feathers there. We're going to draw those. I see this little shape here, which is some feathers that connect to the thumb, which is a very interesting little piece. I love being able to see the different sections here. But we're mostly interested in getting the secondaries and the primaries. All right, to get us started, I'm using my Blackwing. I'm using my Lyra. Got my trusty Knead eraser. And that should be about all we need today. So I'm going to start with this. And sure, I'll get like a simple idea for the body and that far wing over there, but we're mostly going to draw into focus this one. So this is the bend of the wing. This is going to be effectively the wrist. Metacarpals. Is that the word? Metacarpals? It's not what we're trying to remember today. Primaries and secondaries. Fingers. So I'm just kind of setting down the bones. I always like to try and like visualize where the bones are. So this is our forearm. And we're going to put the humerus foreshortened right in here. Okay, so that I've just drawn that very lightly. That's going to disappear under our feathers. But that's the idea. While we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and draw the kind of the simple shape of the wing. This is like the skin that follows the bone structure, and it just kind of encases the muscle and everything. And that's going to be a shape about like this, right? I don't think I need to erase this too much. Let me go ahead and make it a little bit clearer before we erase it. So humerus, radius and ulna, wrist, thumb, finger, metacarpals. That's the bone structure, essentially. Okay, backing that up. So that's important because, as we saw on my previous page, that's where the primaries and secondaries emerge. So I'm going to start with these ideas and pencil in a big shape for the secondaries and a big shape for the primaries. The primaries are the long, elegant end feathers here. And there's like tertiaries and scapularies and stuff in there, but we're not going to worry about it too much. I like trying to try to simplify down the things that I want to just keep in my head forever. So I'm still just looking, still just shoring up ideas, getting the shapes that I want, getting the proportions that I want. And we're not worried about this, we'll just build in the simple ideas here. Okay, secondaries, primaries. On top of these, we have another collection of feathers, and then yet another smaller one here on the top. And I'm noticing that the feathers coming from the radius and ulna are sweeping this way, and the ones coming from the wrist and fingers are more sweeping this way. So let's look at our reference. Secondaries, next layer, top layer. Primaries, next layer, top layer, where the thumb is. Notice kind of the sweep this way. And this one also has a sweep this way, but there's also kind of I'm seeing like a rhythm that comes like that, but also a rhythm that scoots out from under and sweeps this way. Okay, I'm gonna start at the bend in the wing, and I'm just gonna make a simple shape up here, a little bump there. And I'm thinking of how I can simplify this too. This is always one of my prime directives is how, when I'm sitting down to practice like this, is how can I simplify this? So I'm looking at this second row of feathers actually. And I'm just gonna do something like this to kind of suggest all those feathers. And there's a couple ways to do it, a couple ways that I've been experimenting with. So a feather comes in many, many shapes and sizes. I think the secondaries tend to be a little bit thicker. Maybe I should be looking at, no, a different lesson. A different lesson. I'm gonna figure out what this is called and maybe some other ideas about words I can use to talk about these types of feathers. Primary, secondaries. Okay, so this middle structure coming down, maybe I can play with that as like the main idea for a lot of these feathers. So some kind of curve at the end. And then we'll get a little less detail as we come this way. Go. Now let's come to the primaries. I'm gonna start with this, this top row again, work our way down. Like that. And then I'm imagining this feather connecting to the finger, coming down like this. The feathers at the ends tend to splay more. It depends on the orientation of the wing or the function that's happening at the time, taking off, landing, things like that. But often these primaries tend to spread out quite a bit. And that can be something really fun to play with. Let's start with that line in the center this time. Do 3, and I want to imagine these. I don't want to just draw these coming out from here. I want to think about how they come out from the bone. From the bone. So let's keep it to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 will kind of start us clumping together again. I kind of like this shape that I had going here, so let's try to keep that. Sort of rounded on one side and a little bit more squared off on the other. Come this way. Okay, and I need to think about coming from the bone. So something I want to think about in future study sessions too is the overlap. So I'm just thinking about that here. I want to get a little bit more accurate with the overlap. In this case, this side is overlapping the next feather. So it's something like this, make sure we're coming from the bone, would be more accurate. Coming from the bone. Like that. And now we start to see a little bit more separation, a little bit more detail, a little bit more of a point on the feathers. Maybe we can add some extra lines of interest in the feathers, maybe some texture like that, just to suggest. Coming from the fingers. And this last one. Sort of strengthen the outline here. There we go. That's our wing. And with this little bit of studying that I did today and that I'm doing now, there's a lot more solidity that I'm seeing to my choices, and that's what I'm after. Thinking about the center line, even though I kept forgetting, thinking about how it was connecting to the bone, thinking about this shape, thinking about clumped versus separate, thinking about the articulation of the bones, trying to name the bones, all of that helps with the structure. All helps just make it a hint more believable. And you can play with how much you simplify these things. And what's absolutely necessary for readability. And what you can just kind of let go a bit. Now, there is a third level of feathers up here on top, and I do want to add that. They're the shortest feathers. So I'm just going to do something like this. And then for these long feathers, just a little bit of value separation there. And we'll do the same here for the second layer. There we go. Primaries, secondaries. Secondaries connect to the radius and ulna. Primaries connect to the wrist and fingers. Okay. Let's find another bird. How about this one? I don't want to get into too much foreshortening yet. This is something that I'll be working on at some point, is doing this incredible foreshortening and trying to figure out where primaries and secondaries fall in this kind of an angle. Sorry about the glare on there. But today I'm going to be looking at the wings a little bit more flat, just to really bake in this idea: primaries, secondaries, secondaries, primaries. So for this bird, we'll mostly just draw this wing. I'll put in just a few ideas for our bird friend there. I think he'll fit nicely here. You can have that wing with all this space up this way. Okay, start with just a tiny bird shape, really lightly. Get his little head in there. I'm just going to let him fade out. We can worry about attaching all the pieces of the bird in another study session. By the way, if you're looking for bird wings specifically to study, it's useful if you type into Google bird taking off or bird landing. It'll bring you a lot more results of open wingspans. Okay, and finally the wing. And I'm thinking about the bone here. So we got our little humerus, and then this is the radius and ulna, and then we got the fingers. So joint, joint. We'll just leave it at that for now. I do like this what is it called? Alula. Yeah, this little thumb. So it makes a little, there's a few special little feathers that connect right there to that thumb. And I can see them really clearly on this little guy. So that's kind of fun. It's a little bonus thing for us, alula, primaries, secondaries. Okay, go ahead and add in the shape of the middle tier of feathers. Kind of round them a little bit to follow the structure. And then our long primary, super splayed out, making the whole shape of the wing. I'm remembering that they connect to the fingers like that. So this whole shape can connect. Bring this down a little. This whole shape can connect like that. And it looks like we are going to be running into our previous drawing, but that's okay. We'll go underneath of it. A little fun layering here. Okay. Primaries, secondaries. And as before, I'm going to start with this middle row of feathers just to kind of establish a simple structure. These are going to be less detailed. Like that. Again, a slight trend toward leaning this way, and these feathers are kind of going back this way. Just something to keep in mind. Something like that. Okay, and then our long primary right here. Connecting to the fingers. Like that. Going to get that little thumb feather in there. Just a fun little detail. You might not always want to add that. It just depends on if you think it's a fun detail or if you feel like it's a distraction. It's totally up to you. But I'm going to draw it right now because I think it's a fun thing to remember. Okay, paying attention to how the feathers are overlapping a bit. feathers are backlit, so it's kind of hard to see. But I believe this edge is on top, maybe. We're gonna try and run with that. I'm gonna start with the spine. Is that a good word? The spine for the feathers. Remembering where they connect up here. Something like that. And then they start to clump a little bit more here. Kind of combine them a bit. And that gives us starts to give us like a clearer idea of, well, I guess it gives us just a fun distinction between the overall shape and then a few individuals to focus on. All right, some wider feathers kind of bridging the gap here. And I'm noticing with this bird in particular, the feathers kind of square off a bit. So we can use that for this shape. I'm still struggling with the overlap, so this I want to overlap here, this I want to overlap here, just to be consistent. And there seems to be, let's go ahead and put in our top most row of feathers here. Just a hint, these are the smallest. Just a little bit of detail here. Hold it to hold the wing more to this figure. And let's add just a little directional detail, directional value here. And this way. And again up here, just to differentiate the layers a bit. Here we go. Just a few more thoughts. Let's run with that. Okay, let's do one more wing. How about an underside? Visualizing bones. I still have trouble visualizing where exactly the humerus connects to the scapula. So this has to be, I can see the primaries, I can see the secondaries. This has to be the finger and wrist and hand. This must be the radius and ulna, and then the little femur must be in here somewhere. And it could be a foreshortening thing. I don't quite have that visualization down pat. There's a highlight touching something here, so I'm thinking maybe it's along there. Let's see if I can find anything helpful. I know that these bones and the feather shape and everything is going to vary drastically from bird to bird. This is not exact in any way. And it could be that with songbirds, the humerus is very short. Let me see if I can make this more specific. Songbird. Give me the bones. I want to see the bones, please. This is a parrot. You can clearly see the humerus there. Yeah, this is interesting. It's pretty hard for me to imagine where that humerus is in this picture. I'm gonna say it's here. And then the radius ulna coming up here, and then fingers. And probably just a hint foreshortened from our angle here. On this guy, you can see it a little bit clearer. I see the humerus here, radius ulna, fingers. So maybe I'll go ahead and draw this guy because I can see it a little bit clearer. And for our purposes today, I think that might be a good thing. Oh my gosh, there we go. Watch Azure struggle with the iPad hour. Okay, this is so fun. Primaries, secondaries. I can see them. They're starting to get comfy in my brain, and I just want this to be something that I look for all the time. Instead of just like, oh, feathers, what's happening? Primaries, secondaries. Other things that I'll be working on in later study sessions, but I can note now are humerus, radius ulna, wrist and fingers, metacarpals, I believe. This little thumb area, the allula. Tertiaries, scapularies, I believe they're called. I think that's all I can name right now from this view. But that's pretty exciting. Okay, let's get our drawing going here. And I think this wing will fit nicely right here. So I'm gonna start with the wing this time. I'll put the wing here. Here's the bend of the wing. Joint, joint. There we go. It's the bone structure. And primaries come from the wrist and fingers. So I'm going to make a shape that connects there. Just a rough kind of box that the feathers make as connected to those bones. Secondaries. Secondaries connect to the radius ulna area. And then tertiaries we're not as worried about right now. Just a hint of the rest of the bird for fun. This is a egret, perhaps, taking off. I used to see these guys all the time in Florida. That's one thing I do miss about Florida is the birds. Florida is for the birds. Okay. Now, in this one, we have some fun lighting to play with, which I don't want to get too caught up in for this, but I just want to note it. What it's telling us is that these wings, these feathers are kind of bowing out a little bit and catching the sun. We see the sun here and like pretty hard on that far wing. So we can get a good idea of where the lighting's coming from. Because these are lit up, and this is not, we have a sense that these feathers are going away from us. They're kind of bowing. These are bowing kind of out toward the sun. These are kind of bowing into a shadow. Just interesting to note. I think this wing might just barely be coming back toward us. Or no, wait. Yeah, it hasn't quite reached peak yet. So these feathers are kind of dragging behind in the wind. That must be it. So you can reach peak, flap, and then come back down. A little bit of drag there. So I'm going to make try to make like a little bit more of a bowed structure in the wings. Maybe emphasize these shadows a little bit for fun and really kind of tuck these secondaries back in there. Why not? Okay, I like this starting with the structure up here. So this is the allula area. So the thumb is tucked in there somewhere and with its own special little feathers. We can pretty clearly see this ridge of feathers that follows along the bone, and I'm really interested in that. I think that's pretty cool. It's something I can really see getting some use out of in future drawings, this structure. And I can almost kind of make out kind of that other finger here. So I'm gonna cut the thumb, and then this other finger. And then our primaries start shooting out. We'll let this little guy be in front of the drawing, I guess. All right. And to capture this feather, let's see, I'm seeing a kind of a spine on this feather. Let's make this feather pretty detailed. I'm remembering where it's coming from. That stem's coming all the way back here to this structure. It kind of has these ridges that come out like that. Beautiful shape. It's a beautiful shape. Big fan. Okay, the change in the lighting kind of starts here. So let's go ahead and bracket this in. And then this again is, this feather is coming from wrist hand section, forearm section, humerus. I'm using my X-ray vision, trying to see where these feathers are coming from. It's hard to slow myself down sometimes. I was like, I got it, this is fun, let me just draw. I'm trying to think my way through a little bit. Okay, we have three pretty distinct feathers here. Maybe like 5. Let's do 5. Odd numbers are always nice. And then they really start to sort of clump together. We're looking at the underside of the wing, which means the under part is overlapping the top part. Whereas on these other ones, looking at the overside, the spine, I don't have the words yet to really talk about it, but the out-facing side is overlapping the under-facing side, so the right's overlapping the left, and on this one it's the opposite. So I'm trying to make these, this one's a little bit too distinct. I'm trying to make these kind of diminish in texture and distinctness from one another. And I've stopped tracing back to the bones. Let me try to do that again. And then these secondaries are really tucked in there, so we really only kind of get the edge of them. Lots of overlap in there. Okay, I'm gonna throw this part into shadow. And I think I made these feathers a bit too large. Something's not quite working out with them. I'm just gonna gently dial it back and try again. These are the center spines. The bottom part is overlapping the top. So like that. Bottom part is overlapping the top. Bottom part is overlapping the top. So this is a lot of math for my brain right now, somehow. That leaves us with this final outline we can emphasize. Like that. This feather's very thick, so I didn't get my spacing quite right. And let's call, thinking about shadows now. This is a tough one. I didn't think this one was going to be that tough, but my brain's really struggling. I'm just gonna have those like that, like they're catching the light a little bit. Maybe a couple feathers that I'm not quite sure what group they belong to. Scapularies, perhaps. Really catching the light here. Lots of folding along here. Bend of the wing, alula. Detail lost in shadow, we'll just kind of give it some direction. The shadow being created by the feather on top of it. Okay, this little guy ended up being pretty confusing, but that's okay. I think this is about where we're gonna land. And I take comfort in the fact that these wings are all better than most wings I've ever drawn. So, secondaries, primaries. Primaries, secondaries. And I feel reasonably confident that any bird I look at from now on, I'll think about that. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive on wings. I know I did. If you want pictures of the drawings, I will most likely be posting those on my Patreon. And in other housekeeping, I'm still working on a face cam, more specifically lighting for a face cam, so my face isn't weirdly underlit. And yeah, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you had an enjoyable time, and I'll see you next time. Bye.